So without any further ado, I'll hand it over to Frederic to introduce himself and a little bit about the 2021 vintage.
Yeah. Bonjour à tous, bonsoir. It's nice to be with us tonight, enfin today for you. It's night for me. Yes, I'm the winemaker for Bouchard, Pere, still 20 years now. I started in 2003, and we will speak about the 21 vintage in Bourgogne. 21 vintage was a very challenging vintage and finally a rare vintage because it's an historical vintage because the yield was so low. We produce very few quantity of each wine. If you analyze this vintage, it was really special because the winter was so warm, especially in January and February. And just to have an idea with the team, when we were in the vineyard, we finished to prune in February just with a t-shirt. That was exceptional because the temperature was too hot. And with this hot temperature, unfortunately, the bud breaks appear more sooner than usual. And at the beginning of April, we had the beginning of leaves, small leaves, 1 or 2 leaves, especially on the Chardonnay. And during 3 nights, 7, 8, and 9 April, unfortunately, the temperature go down below 0. And during the night, especially the night of the 7th April, the temperature was 7 to 8 degrees Celsius below 0. It was too frost, and also the snow appeared. We tried with the team. We were on the vineyard during the night with candle, to make fire, to try to up temperature and to rescue something. But honestly, with the cold temperature, with the snow, the humidity was too high, and immediately at 2 a.m. early morning, the bud became black, and we lost everything. That was very difficult for the team. After that, the beginning of the spring was more wet than usual. It was a difficult condition to work in the vineyard, but we worked hardly to rescue the vintage, to rescue some berries. We eliminate the leaves to have a good exposure. And fortunately, the summer was nice, especially August and September. All the condition was very nice, and that's permit to reach a beautiful maturity. It was not a high maturity, but beautiful maturity. And finally, I started to harvest the 16th September. It was a classic vintage. And I just finished to harvest all the domain the 27th September, just before the rain, because after the 27th, 28th September, there was a very big rain. And fortunately, we harvest all the estate before that. Alors, the yield was exceptional low. Just to have an idea, I produce in average in all the estate 10 hectoliters per hectare for the Chardonnay. But it was really heterogeneous. I produce 5 hectoliters on the Chevalier Montrachet. I do not produce La Cabotte because there is not enough quantity. 4 or 5 hectoliters for the Corton Charlemagne, Le Corton, same thing. 6 hectoliters for the Volnay-les-Cailleret. But honestly, it's historically, we never see that since 1930, 1831. It was very difficult for the quantity. For the Pinot Noir, I produce 18 to 20 hectoliters per hectare. For some vineyard, we do not harvest because there is nothing. For example, we do not harvest les Castilles. There is not enough grape. I declassified to the Gevrey-Chambertin village. But after that, it was very important to harvest at the good date, to select the grapes, because there was some disease, some gray roots, especially on the Pinot Noir. But we select hardly. And I choose for the red vinification to increase the whole cluster, to have a better expression, and to decrease a little the acidity. It was a classic maceration during 10-12 days. And after that, it was a long élevage of 16-18 months in barrels. And but the good surprise was the quality of the red, because it's more a classic vintage. If you remember, more 2000, 1966. It's really a charming vintage with a lot of aromatic expression, a lot of red fruit expression, beautiful balance. It's not a heavy vintage, not too rich. It's very elegant, very enjoyable. And for me personally, it remember me 2000. I love 2000, because today, if you open a bottle of 2000, you drink the bottle just yourself. It's really nice. For the white was different. It's I think 21 will be really an astonishing vintage for the future, also because the acidity was very high. It's really a classic vintage, and with a high concentration, a high expression of the terroir, and especially for the Corton Charlemagne, les Meursault Geneuvrières, les Perrières was just wow. With really aromatic and so precise in the mouth. And there is not a lot of quantity, but I think for some people who had some bottle, it could be a great vintage, and you could appreciate now, but also it's a nice vintage for a long aging potential.
Perfect, thank you. So would you kind of classify 2021 as more of a red vintage or a white vintage, or both? Is it
It's no, honestly, we work hardly to and finally we were very proud of the red on the white. It's depend of what is your style of wine. If you love a classic vintage in Bourgogne with a beautiful expression, beautiful red fruit, more with a lot of delicacy. It's not an heavy vintage. It's not too rich. It's not 18 or 20. No, it's very classic. It's more, yeah, honestly, it's very close to 2000, 66. Today, it's the same thing, 66. Nobody speak about 66, but today you open a bottle of Baby Jesus 66. It's so charming. It's very light color, but the aromatic expression, the delicacy of the tannin in the mouth, it's just wonderful. And for the white, I think the white is better to keep it just 2-3 years, but no, it's a nice vintage.
perfect? And you mentioned that the weather in the summer was very hot. Like, what do you do in the vineyards to kind of eliminate the scorching heat and try to protect the grapes as much as possible?
In fact, in the vineyard, today we use only organic method and more biodynamic, but without certification. We practice it, and in fact, the pressure with Oidium was high, but it was okay with the team. I think the most important was to eliminate the leaves, to have a good exposure to the sun, to permit to reach beautiful maturity, to have lot of no disease. And also we spray kaolin to absorb humidity. We have some zest of orange that permit to against the disease naturally in the vineyard. But finally, the most important thing for us, it was to think for the future and to rescue the vine, because with the frost, we lost a lot of bud. And the bud was so important for the next years when you prune during the winter. And sometimes we have more to think about the future, and and to try to select the good bud and to protect it during all the season.
Perfect, thank you. Just a reminder that if anyone has any questions, you can feel free to put them in the chat. And also we do have a digital booklet all about the 2021 vintage. So I will put that link in the chat as well, so you can flip through it and have it for your records. But now I want to talk a little bit about some of Bouchard's most iconic holdings. And in Beaune, Bouchard is kind of the largest landholder with over 130 hectares throughout Burgundy, but Beaune is kind of the heart of the property. So if you want to talk about, Frederic, kind of the most iconic parcels in Beaune, including Clos de la Mousse and Saint Landry, I think that's kind of a good place to start, and then we can go from there.
Yes, alors in Beaune, historically, Bouchard it's a large owner in the Beaune Premier Cru appellation. That's come from the history because we were lucky we could purchase some vineyard just after the French Revolution because it was the property of the church, and the Bouchard Pere takes the opportunity to purchase this vineyard. And that's why we had some monopole on an exclusivity. Alors les monopoles, it was le Clos Saint-Landry for the white and Chardonnay, le Clos de la Mousse for the red, and also la vigne de l'Enfant Jésus. Alors la vigne de l'Enfant Jésus, it's not a monopole, but only Bouchard produces the vigne de l'Enfant Jésus. It's unique. Just to have an idea of the style of the terroir, le Clos Saint-Landry, it's really unique. If you come in Bourgogne and you see the vineyard, we have just 2 hectares, and all around it's red wine, and you have just 2 hectares of Chardonnay. And since the 13th century, this plot was always planted with white varieties because the monk decided that, and they have the ability to choose. The story, we said the monk tastes the herbs to decide what type of grapes is better for this soil. And effectively, when we analyze the soil, it's yellow marl, and yellow marl, it's really perfect for the Chardonnay. And that's why just here in the small plot, there is always Chardonnay since 700 years. It's unique. With the name of Saint Landry, it was the name of the Cistercian monk. And les Saint Landry, it's always a beautiful expression with a gold color. It remember me perhaps Meursault les Gouttes d'Or, because we have a beautiful gold color. You have a good expression of the nose with yellow fruit, with dried berries, and some apricot nose. And but in the mouth, it's a Beaune. It's a generous. It's large. You have some creamy notes, and with just a touch of zest and dried berries in the finish. It's really a beautiful expression of the Beaune Premier Cru. Clos de la Mousse. Clos de la Mousse, it's also a monopole, and we know this plot since the 13th century. It was a property of the Eudes de Seudon. It was a great owner in Bourgogne, and it was a property of the church l'Abbaye de Mézières. And this plot was purchased by the Bouchard family in 1826, and they have the entire property in 1872 to have the monopole, because it was a very beautiful terroir. It's a high terraces. The nature of the soil, it's a very dense clay. You have 2 meters of clay, and the vine never suffer of the drought. There is no hydric stress. That is, and more with the global warming, that's a great terroir for the future, because there is no stress. I could wait to reach beautiful maturity without stress, and it's always a very beautiful expression of red fruit with a jammy note. It's a very appealing wine with a round tannin. Certainly, le Clos de la Mousse, it's you have for a young wine there, you find the most pleasure. It's really appealing, and it's a very gentle wine with very round tannin. L'Enfant Jésus, it's a grave appellation. Les Grèves, it's a gravelly soil, it's a sandy soil. But fortunately, la vigne de l'Enfant Jésus, it's a small quarter of 4 hectares, just in the middle of the slope. It's a perfect location. It's like the Grand Cru location. We said it's the filet mignon of the Grève appellation, because in totally Grèves, there is 32 hectares. But the vigne de l'Enfant Jésus, it's just a few parts. And it's a gentle slope, 2-3 meters of sandy soil. It's very well drained, but it's enough thick to have enough damp for the vine. Same thing, there is no hydric stress, but the maturity arrives more sooner than the Claude Lamousse. But the expression of the Enfant Jésus is totally different. At the beginning, for a young wine, it's a little more closed, but after 5-7 years, the wine is just marvelous. It's the level of a Grand Cru. The specific nose of the Enfant Jésus, you have the violet, the very blueberry note, and some fresh leather with a spicy note. And after in the mouth, it's the delicacy of the tannin. It's unique. It's a very long wine, more powerful in the mouth, and the ageability is just wonderful. We had a lot of baby Jesus in our collection from the 19th century to today, and it's just unique. And even after 100 years, you recognize the style of the l'Enfant Jésus with the spicy notes, the rainforest, with some mantle in the finish. It's just wonderful.
Thank you. And then also in Beaune, we do have the Beaune du Chateau red and white, kind of a very great expression of the Beaune Premier Cru, with the red being made up of 17 different parcels and the white is 4. If you want to just talk a little bit about that, those 2 wines and the Beaune Premier Cru appellation.
Excuse me, I just read the question of Rebecca, and I did not hear you. Sorry.
Yeah. So if you want to just talk about the Beaune du Chateau, the red and the white, with the red being made of 17 different parcels and
Yes.
and the white. Yeah.
Alors, le Beaune du Château, it's a specificity of Bouchard Pere fils. In fact, alors Bouchard, we are owner of 42 hectares in total in Beaune Premier Cru, and it was unique. But just in 1907, the Bouchard family decided to create 2 cuvées for the Beaune du Château Rouge and Beaune du Château Blanc. In fact, it's unique because in Bourgogne we never blend the different terroirs, but for the Beaune du Château we do that. And for the red wine, we have 17 different Premier Cru. We vinificate separately, we aging separately, and after I blend it together. It's always the same recette since 1907 to create the cuvée Beaune du Château. And that's permit just to have enough wine to simplify the offer. That was the idea on the past. But for me, technically, it's great because I could play with a different style of terroir and to create a specific cuvée, very consistency year after year, with a good expression of bone, a little more very appealing, more with a lot of immediate pleasure. Because we have different expression with les Beaunes à l'écu, it's more high in altitude with a beautiful acidity. Les sans vigne, it's a very floral expression, very delicate. Les aigros, they're always very red fruit, very charming. Les avaux, it's more deeper. And I could play with a different style of Beaune, and when I blend it, I think it's a good introduction to understand Beaune appellation and also to understand the Bouchard Pere fils. And for the white, same philosophy. We have a 10 hectare, 5 different Premier Cru, and with 5 different expression. And when I blend it, that's permit to have a beautiful expression of Beaune. With Beaune, it's perhaps a mix between Puligny and in Meursault, because at the beginning it's a very charming in the nose with a lot of white flower. In the beginning of the mouth, it's more creamy, but after the finish, it's you have always a beautiful zest, beautiful energy in the hand.
Thank you. And if you just
But
want to,
you could enjoy the bone more sooner than the Meursault and Puligny. It's better to age a little more.
thank you. If you just want to address, Rebecca had a question about the average amount of whole clusters that you typically use, since you mentioned that on the red wines for the 2021 vintage, you increased the whole cluster percentage to then decrease the acidity levels.
Yeah. In fact, there is no rules to when you use whole cluster. In fact, it's depend of the maturity, it's depend of your plot, it's depend of the tasting of the berries and the observation. But finally, in 21, the maturity was good. The stem was yellow and brown with a good maturity. But also, I loved for the vinification to have more whole cluster because that's permit to have a better expression in the nose. It's more aromatic, and during the maceration you could extract more gently the tannin, and that's permit to have a more longer alcoholic fermentation because Pinot Noir is very fragile during the alcoholic fermentation. It do not support the too much aeration, too much oxygen. And during the fermentation, you could extract the wine, you could build the wine, and with whole cluster, you have more longer alcoholic fermentation. And the advantage also it's to because on the stem you have some potassium, and the potassium naturally decrease the acidity. And I think it was a good way, especially for 21, because 21 the acidity was higher than usual, and that permit to recover a good balance.
Thank you. And then I think it's important to also talk about the Grand Cru holdings that Bouchard has. So I think specifically if you want to start with Lake Corton and Corton Charlemagne, and kind of talk about what makes them important, how they are iconic to the estate, and anything along that line.
Mm-hmm. Alors, Corton Charlemagne, we are lucky because in fact it's a very big plot. In totally we have 7 hectares. It's only one great plot, and we purchased it in 1909. And we have 3 hectares on the bottom for Le Corton, for the red wine, for Pinot Noir. There is a stone wall, and just above it is 4 hectares for the Corton Charlemagne with the Chardonnay. There is just a stone wall who separates the 2 appellations. But in fact, the nature of the soil is totally different. For the Corton, it is red clay rich in iron that gives more powerful to the wine. But after it's a bedrock of limestone. And that is very important because it's unique. Just in this part, you have a bedrock of limestone, and that gives more elegance, more floral note. And that's why, classically, if you compare with the other producer of Corton, classically, Le Corton, it's more a masculine wine, a little more massive, more angular tannin, very powerful. It needs a long aging. But for Le Corton, it's Le Lieu dit. And just in this specific place, it was a historical place of the Grand Cru. The nature of the soil is different, and you have more limestone. And the limestone gives the elegance and a little more light color, but a very delicate tannin. And you could enjoy Le Corton more sooner than the other. Alors, after the stone wall was built exactly on a geological fail. And just above for the Corton Charlemagne, the soil is different. It's yellow and white marl, and that is perfect for the Chardonnay. But it's a poor soil. You have only 80, 90 centimeter, and after it's a bedrock of the La Pierre de Corton of the limestone. Alors, on the position of the Corton Charlemagne, it's east facing, more high in altitude at 300 meters. And it's rare because most of the other Corton Charlemagne are on the south exposure, southwest. And for Bouchard, it's only on the east. The position for it's like les Montrachet, les Chevaliers Montrachet. You have the early, the morning sun. It's different. And fortunately, we never had the the evening sun because we have the shadow from the forest. And that is great because that's permit to keep a natural acidity, a very nice energy, nice acidity in the wine, and it's very unique. And that's why if you could compare to taste the other Charlemagne. Charlemagne classically it's a little more opulent, large wine, very rich. But Bouchard Pere Fils with the east facing high altitude, you have always more delicacy, more saltiness. It's very more delicate.
And then if you want to just talk a little bit about the sustainability efforts at Bouchard and kind of the organic and biodynamic practices that you use, your organic certification, which should be hopefully coming in the next few years. I think that's really important to talk about with kind of climate change changing how some of these wines are tasting as well.
Yes, we started to use organic methods since now almost more than 10 years. No, for us, yes, I don't know, in 25 we will have the certification, but finally that is not the most important. The most important is to protect the environment because we depend of the nature, we depend of the weather, and for us the philosophy is to we would like to make the maximum to protect our vineyard and to transmit a better vineyard for the next generation, and that's why we stopped to use les désherbants since 10 years. We use only organic method, but also we replant trees. We restore the stone wall with but without concrete. It's very more traditional making when we rebuild the stone wall. And finally, the stone wall to replant trees, that's permit to increase the biodiversity in the vineyard. We have more birds, we have more insects, we have more small lizards. It's important to recreate a good environment for the vineyard. And yeah, and more we increase the practice of the biodynamic. Alors, in the cellar, we respect the moon, we respect the different period when we racking the wine, when I bottled it. In the vineyard, it's the same thing. We spray. Alors, I'm sorry, I do not have the English word to say that, but it's in 501, in 500p. That's it's different preparation. We spray on the soil in the vineyard, and that's permit to have more life in the soil. To have in fact we constate when we observe the soil, it's more easier to cultivate, to plough the soil. It's more gravelly, more yeah, there is more life, and we think it's better for the nature. It's also better for people who work in the vineyard, and that is important.
Thank you. And now just to kind of come back to current times of the 2017 and 2018 vintages, which I think a lot of people are selling right now or at their distributors. If you just want to talk a little bit about both the 17 and 18 and kind of how those wines are drinking now.
Now, 17 and 18 was totally different. That's depend of your taste. 17, it was 17. Finally, if you observe the year, we have a very cold winter that was perfect to kill all the disease. The spring was perfect. The summer was very warm, very hot, but fortunately we had just a rain before the harvest, 1 week before the harvest, and that's changed everything, and that's permit to have a beautiful berries, more juicy. And today, if you taste the 17 for the Pinot Noir, it's a very delicate vintage, very approachable, really charming, with a lot of fruit expression of the nose. It's a warm vintage. You have more spicy note, more warmer in the hand of your mouth. Personally, I love 17. It's so, perhaps it's the vintage today, you have the more pleasure, an immediate pleasure. For the white, same thing, beautiful expression with more yellow fruit nose. It's not too large, but with a beautiful finish, with a beautiful acidity, with more saltiness. It's more focus. 18, it's totally different. 18, it was a warm vintage. All the condition was good. It was a generous vintage too. We produce a beautiful quantity for Pinot and Chardonnay. It was the summer was really warm. We harvest in August. And the Pinot Noir, it was a more very more concentration, more black color, more black fruit on the expression, but with a full-bodied wine, beautiful tannin, very round, but more with more it's more yes, more full, more rich. And the white, beautiful, very expressive. For the aperitif, it's perfect. Very with a lot of yellow and white flower. It's more rich in the mouth. 18, you could compare. For me, it's a great vintage. You could compare with 09, 99. The ageability will be great, and but it's two style. It's really two opposites. If you like the elegance, 17. If you like more rich wine, more full body wine, 18.
Great, thank you. I think just one last thing I wanted to touch on, and Rebecca has a question as well, so we can address that first and then come back. But Rebecca is wondering if you'll share with the group what your philosophy is on the wood treatments for the Premier and Grand Cru wines.
Alors, classically, the philosophy of Bouchard, and for me, my team, we have certainly the most beautiful collection of terroir. And for us, it was so important to express the terroir, to respect the style of the vintage. And we are not here to express a style of vinification or an aging treatment. No, for the aging, classically, for the red wine, I use between 25 to 35% of new oak, and after that, it's old barrel from 1 to 4 years old. And for the white, it's a little less. It's between 15 to 20% of new oak. It's only French oak. It's come from Bourgogne Cooper. It's depend of the vintage. Sometimes I choose more Allier, the location for the oak, Allier, because that's permit to have more round tannin, to have more. That's nice for the Pinot Noir. Also from Vaud, it's more the northeast because it's a little more tight. That protects the natural freshness. But it depends of the vintage, and we have different copper because each copper it's different. It's that's permit to increase the complexity in our wine. But after that, the most important is to express the terroir and to respect the vintage. A Genévrière, it is a Genévrière, and Pere is different, Charlemagne is different.
Thank you. And then just one final thing I wanted to touch on was kind of when you're tasting through these wines of any vintage, not just the 2021 vintage, it's kind of traditional for Bouchard to taste the reds first and then the whites. Do you want to talk a little bit about why that is and kind of how that came to be?
Alors, yes, alors in Bourgogne, but classically for Bouchard, we would prefer to start with the red because the Pinot Noir is more delicate. It's a beautiful red fruit nose. The tannin is more soft, and after that we finish with the white. The white, and especially to Bouchard, we always finish with the Corte Charlemagne, a Montrachet, a Chevalier Montrachet, with a lot of saltiness, a lot of minerality. It's a very powerful wine. And after a Montrachet, if you would like to retest another red wine, it's impossible. The first red wine, it's disappear. And that's why we start with the red and we finish with the white.
Perfect, thank you. If anyone has any additional questions, feel free to ask them, put them in the chat. This was recorded, so you'll receive the link to the recording once it's up. And yeah, I think the PO deadlines for the 2021 vintage are due shortly if they have not already been due. So you will start to receive those soon. And I hope everyone has a fabulous rest of your day. And thank you for coming to this.
Merci à tous. Bonne soirée.